Hello, nice to meet you. I am Kim Gi-hwan. Today, it is time to analyze South Jeolla and North Jeolla. Fortunately, the weather was extremely hot until yesterday, but today it seems like the heat is easing a bit with some rain. However, I've noticed that many people seem to be getting COVID-19 these days. Our staff have also been affected, and our families are once again facing COVID-19. Everyone should be very careful, and it would be great if you could wear masks while working. Today, we will be going to South Jeolla and North Jeolla, and we will take a look at each region one by one. First, we will head to South Jeolla. The latest data update date is August 18th. Hello, are user happy? Nice to meet you. Currently, the investment score for South Jeolla is not very good. It's around 56 points, which means it's slightly above average. It's not particularly good. However, the prices for Jeon's and sales are gradually converging. The Jeon's prices are relatively stable. The undervaluation of Jeon's is not significant at about 3.4%, so it can't be considered highly overvalued, but there does seem to be a bubble in the sales prices compared to the actual utility value of Jeon's. Next, looking at the Housing Purchase Burden Index. In South Jeolla, it is currently moving like this. So, looking at the data, it is currently at 53. Historically, it has been 58. Then, the low point. During that time is around 40. Now, it seems to be overvalued by about 9 to 24%. So we can say it is currently overvalued by around 10 to 25%. This indicates that there is a bubble of about 10 to 25% in terms of income. When it was low, it was less than 3 times. But now it is about 3.7 times. At this level, it seems similar to the end of 2017. Additionally, when comparing it to bank interest rates, it is slightly higher at 4.1%. But historically, it is considered quite low. Therefore, it can be considered a good time to invest when the rate is more than 2%, higher than the bank interest rate. Next, in the case of South Jeolla, we will need to look at the regions in more detail later, but for now, as you can see, there is a certain amount of housing supply expected until 2025 and 2026. It appears that the supply volume will decrease for about 27 years, and considering this, the incoming volume is not that large. As you can see here, the planned supply volume is indicated, and if the ratio is low, it means there isn't much supply. Therefore, places like Sejong, Jeju, South Gyeongsang, and Ulsan have very little inventory. There is a significant supply of housing in areas like North Chungcheong, Daejeon, Incheon, Cheoncheon, Jeonseom, Gwangju, and South Chungcheong. You can see it this way. Next, the unsold units are slightly piling up like this. Here, there is no further increase or decrease, and unsold properties are still somewhat accumulating. The number of unsold properties should probably decrease a bit. Although the transaction volume has slightly increased, it is still below the average. There hasn't been much change in external investment, and if we look at the map, where is South Jeolla? Yes, it's right here. This area here is South Jeolla, so it's almost on the far left. In other words, South Jeolla is one of the regions with the worst atmosphere in the sales market, and the supply and demand for Jeonse in South Jeolla can no longer rise and is gradually declining. The sales market is still quite frozen at the moment, and while the Jeonse market is okay, it is not showing significant strength. Let's take a longer historical view on this. This is how it turns out. Since this is a local area, we only have data from 2013, and looking at it this way, the supply and demand for sales is really not good. The market situation is really bad. Historically speaking, it's almost the worst. The best times for South Jeolla were around 2015 and 2016. It was truly good then. Next, it is assessed that the supply and demand for Jeonse is historically at a quite low level. Next, regarding the Consumer Sentiment Index. As I always mention, the Consumer Sentiment Index is a lagging indicator. This material was created by asking questions to the general public, so the indicators for sales and Jeonse are not necessarily good. What about the real estate agents? The sales prices in South Jeolla are expected to rise slightly before falling. Right now, where is it? South Jeolla is located here. South Jeolla is located on the far left of the country. What does this mean? It suggests that real estate agents in South Jeolla believe that the current sales prices will likely be the least favorable in the future. Therefore, you can consider South Jeolla as the area with the most negative outlook. The The Jeon's prices have risen slightly, but they are still below 100. They need to be above 100 to indicate a strong market. As you can see here, we can divide the areas into quadrants. The first quadrant, represented by the dotted line, includes regions like Seoul, Ulsan, Incheon, Gyeonggi, and North Jeolla, which are relatively strong in terms of sales and jeons. On the other hand, the areas where both sales and jeonsi are weak are also present. But the overall trend is moving upwards, right? It's going in the right direction, isn't it? It's getting a little better, but it's still not that good, as you can see. Let's take a look at the population, shall we? We'll consider the last 2 years. Currently, in the case of South Jeolla, the increase rate of households is the lowest after Seoul. The increase in the number of households in Seoul is currently very weak. Among Seoul, South Jeolla and North Gyeongsang, these three areas have the slowest rate of increase in the number of households. It is the least favorable situation. What about the population? It is currently ranked 14th and is decreasing by 1.8%. So, the population is continuously declining. So, when looking at it this way, South Jeolla doesn't seem like a very favorable area. Next, if you look at jobs, they usually last about a year, and the job situation is fairly similar. While the number of jobs is not decreasing, it is not a region like Ulsan or South Chungcheong where jobs are actively increasing. As I mentioned earlier, at least jobs are not being reduced. This is the current assessment. I will also take a quick look at North Jeolla. How is North Jeolla doing? The investment score is still 58 points. Both South Jeolla and North Jeolla do not have very good investment scores. Next, let me point out one important aspect. For example, the movements in Seoul are quite similar. Additionally, the metropolitan area close to Seoul also shows similar movements to Seoul. Whether it rises a little more slowly, falls a little more slowly, or rises a bit faster, there are some differences in timing, but the overall context is similar. Do you know why? This is possible because of the proximity to work and residence. Now, let's take a look at the map of South Jeolla and North Jeolla. What was the purpose of listening to stories of the regions? This is South Jeolla and this is North Jeolla. There are areas within South Jeolla where living close to work is not feasible. The same goes for North Jeolla. And what about areas where commuting is not convenient? The movements in the real estate market vary significantly. Therefore, especially in provincial areas, making decisions based solely on regional data can be quite risky. In the case of provinces, it is essential to analyze in detail, such as focusing on Gwangyang in South Jeolla or Gunsan and Jeonju in North Jeolla. Do you understand? Therefore, for areas where proximity to the market is not achievable, it is essential to examine the data in more detail. As for North Jeolla, it is generally on the rise, isn't it? The sale prices are rising and the jeon's prices are also increasing. It looks good. North Jeolla definitely seems to be better than South Jeolla. Here, the sales prices are slightly inflated compared to the current jeon's prices, but this level is not a problem at all. Additionally, when looking at the Housing Purchase Burden Index, it is currently at 60. The historical average is 50, and the low point is around this time. I also bought quite a bit in North Jeolla in the fall of 2019, and at that time it was 48, so I would consider anything below 50 as the bottom. If it's 50, then that's the bottom. So, how much is North Jeolla currently overvalued? It's overvalued by about 8 to 16%, so roughly around 8 to 15%. So, how does it compare to South Jeolla? There is not much of a bubble. It seems that there is less of a bubble compared to South Jeolla. Additionally, North Jeolla still has better rental income compared to bank interest rates, but the difference is only 0.7%. A difference of more than 2% would be considered very good. It means that the potential investment returns are much more promising compared to bank interest rates. What about North Jeolla? North Jeolla is also moving in this direction. The jeon's rate is now about 80%. So where is the best place for top gap investment? North Jeolla, North Chungcheong, North Gyeongsang, South Jeolla, Gangwon, and South Chungcheong are all regions where the jeon's rate is high, making them very good areas for gap investment. Therefore, North Jeolla is also quite favorable for gap investment, as it currently has the best jeon's rate in South Korea. However, North Jeolla is at an average level this year, but next year, the supply volume is expected to increase again. By 2025, the supply volume will rise, and in 2026, it will decrease again. Let's take a look at this. As a whole, we'll examine it like this, and then look at it quarterly. Looking at it this way, the supply volume will increase significantly in the third and fourth quarters of this year, and into the first quarter of next year. Right, so, after the first quarter of next year, there will be some supply volume, but not much. In fact, at this level. And since this is just one instance, it doesn't seem to be a major issue. So, when looking at the year 2025, there is a slight amount of proven supply, but there is no end to the first quarter, and there is a little in the fourth quarter. However, regarding risks related to supply, it should be resolved by the first quarter of next year. It's coming to an end. After that, the number of unsold properties is gradually decreasing. Although there is a reduction in unsold properties, there are still quite a few. The transaction volume is about the same. The investment in remote areas is also about the same. And then here, the supply and demand for sales improved a bit, but has since declined again. It improved and then dropped again. And where is North Jeolla? It's right here. So it's still quite to the right. It is quite to the right. Still, the sales market is not as bad as in Sejong, Daegu, Busan, Gwangju, or South Jeolla. But it is also difficult to say that it is good. It is quite high up there. In other words, the supply and demand for Jeonts can be considered quite good, but with an increase in the number of move-ins next year and a continued high volume of move-ins in the third and fourth quarters of this year and the first quarter of next year, it seems unlikely that the supply and demand for Jeonse will improve significantly until around the first quarter of next year. It may drop a bit more. After that, the sales sentiment has risen to 110. It's quite significant, isn't it? North Jeolla is doing fairly well. It's actually quite good right now. Right now, excluding areas like Seoul and Incheon, it's North Jeolla. The sales sentiment is very good, and the Jeont sentiment is gradually improving. Next, when looking at the expected sales prices, Jeont's prices, and outlook index for 3 months ahead from the real estate agents, North Jeolla is included here. Outside of Seoul and Gyeonggi, and excluding Ulsan, North Jeolla is currently the best. This is the view held by real estate agents at the moment. Let's take a look at the population and the number of households. Hello, Mr. Kang Tae-hyun. Nice to meet you. Still, when looking at the change rate in the number of households and the cumulative change rate in population, North Jeolla is not doing very well. It is a region where the population continues to decline significantly. The population is decreasing. Fortunately, the number of households is still gradually increasing. And when it comes to jobs, the situation is about the same. So in both South Jeolla and North Jeolla, the job opportunities are quite similar. So there has been a slight increase after all. You can see it this way. Having quickly looked at South Jeolla and North Jeolla, it seems that North Jeolla has a smaller bubble and looks a bit better compared to South Jeolla. When I compared and analyzed South Chungcheong and North Chungcheong last time, the data indicated that South Chungcheong was somewhat better than North Chungcheong. However, this time it seems that North Jeolla is a bit better than South Jeolla. I think this way, but it can change when we go into the details. Before diving into the details, let's take a look at the trend of prices.